Hello again and welcome to another Warlord Wednesday. It's the day of the week where we talk about all things bolt action. Today we are going to be continuing our starter army review series. We've done loads of these videos now, and now we're going to be taking a look at the Imperial Japanese starter army. In case you've not seen one of these videos before, what I like to do is go through the exact contents of the box so you know what you're buying, and then I like to go through in a little bit more detail what each one of those kits is like. Is it a plastic kit, a metal one, is it modern, is it a bit older? So you guys also know the details of all the kits involved in each starter army. I also like to talk about how flexible the starter army is. So is it fixed into early war or late war, or can it be used for all different time periods and fronts? And I also like to do a little bit of a comparison to other starter armies to see how this one compares. So that's what you can expect from this video, and now let's dive straight into it. So the first thing to mention is that this is an Imperial Japanese army starter set. Now the reason I mention that, it might sound kind of obvious, but there is a sub-faction within the Imperial Japanese forces in action called the Special Navy Landing Forces. Now, in terms of rules, they're pretty similar. The main difference is they do have some of their own unique models. However, for your basic Navy Landing Force infantry, the majority of the kit is actually Imperial Japanese Army. And the only difference that Warlord does is they hand out some metal head swaps. So if you're thinking about getting into the Imperial Japanese and you're not sure if you want to go down the Navy route or the Army route, I would still recommend this starter army. The infantry is going to look very, very similar unless you're an absolute stickler for the specific Warlord models. Very few people will be able to tell the difference. So I think it is a great starter army and it can cover both of those different forces. Now, one thing I want to say straight off the bat is what time period this army is useful for, and the great news is that you can pretty much use it for any Japanese army in World War II from 1939 all the way through to 1945. One of the quirks with the Japanese army in bolt action is that basically all of their equipment stays the same throughout the war. They kept using bolt action Osaka rifles, they had a few SMGs, a few LMGs, their tanks basically stayed the same. So whilst in real life it wasn't great that the Japanese used pretty much the same equipment throughout the war and everyone else is upgrading, in bolt action it's good because it means that you don't need to worry about, oh, can I use this STG-44 in Italy or can I not? That's one of the questions the Germans have got to make. Oh, I can't use Panzerfaust now, or all that kind of stuff. With the Japanese, it doesn't really matter. You build blokes with rifles, you build the tanks, the machine guns, the mortars, all those kind of things. They pretty much use them through from 1938 all the way through to 1945. So you should be absolutely fine to use this starter army to represent any Japanese army for World War II. Okay then, but now that we've got that stuff out of the way, let's take a look at what you get in this starter army. So the first thing is you get 49 infantry, you get 1 vehicle, you get 2 artillery/war machines, and you get 6 crew for those artillery pieces. If we scroll down a little bit more, you can see the exact breakdown. So you can see here that you get what out of those 49 infantry, 1 of them is a metal officer and the rest of them are plastic infantry. So that's actually really good that they're giving you a huge amount of plastic infantry. Japanese in bolt action use a lot of infantry. They're a very infantry heavy faction. So I find that this starter set coming with quite a lot is really, really good. If you compare that to one of the other starter sets, for example, many of the German ones or British ones, they tend to come with like 36 infantry. And that's it, or maybe even like 30 infantry. The fact that this comes with 48 is great. It means Warlord Games has not just copy and pasted a starter army and gone, oh, 36 will be enough. They've gone, no, we know the Japanese use a lot of infantry, so we're going to put an extra couple of sprues in here for our Japanese players. So that's really, really good. You also get 1 metal medium mortar, 1 metal medium machine gun, 1 plastic Type 97 Chiha medium tank, and then you get some stat cards and some vehicle damage markers. Warlord even on the website give you an example of how you could build the list, which is all right. It's an okay list. I would probably build it slightly differently, but overall, the amount of models you get in this kit is really good, and the composition of the models is also pretty good for a Japanese army. So now let's do a deeper dive on the different kits you get in this starter army. And the first one that we're going to take a look at, in my opinion, the most important one is going to be that Imperial Japanese Infantry, okay? Because that makes up the bulk of the models in this kit. So if we take a look at the sprue over here, you can see this is the Imperial Japanese Infantry box, and you're going to get loads of these sprues. You're going to get enough of these sprues to build 48 plastic infantry. Now you can see that one of the first things that jumps out is that this is a more modern Warlord sprue. It's not one of the older original ones. The way we know that is because we've got some dynamic poses, people lying down, but also the big giveaway is the weapons are molded into the arms. Those of you who have followed my channel for a long time, followed these review videos, will know that I have a big thing about the weapons being molded into the arms, because it is a nightmare when they are not. The hands just become little balls of glue. It's one of the big issues I have with the Soviet infantry, is that it's still very much that old school infantry. So great that the Imperial Japanese infantry comes with the weapons molded into the arms. That's a big plus. But now let's take a closer look at the different weapon options that you get on this kit, and it's actually really good. You get enough bits on this sprue to build pretty much every kind of Japanese infantry you're ever going to need to worry about. So not only do you get enough rifles to equip every single person here with just your standard Arasaka, which is great, because trust me, you're going to want a lot of riflemen. It's a bit like the Soviets, you're going to want a lot of those basic bodies. With the Japanese, your main core strength comes from cheap infantry that are fearless, and so being able to not be forced to give one or two people here and there like SMGs or other special weapons is great. Some of the issues you can find with some of the German kits is they're so full of specials, they actually forgot to put enough rifle bits in just to build basic people. So it's great that the Japanese kit allows you to build everyone with just a standard rifle. On top of that, you actually get 2 LMGs per sprue as well, which is great. You get this one down here, which you can build either sort of lying down the bipod or sort of slung over someone's back or something. And you also get one that's being fired from the hip. And, of course, it's the Japanese. They've got a bayonet on their machine guns. I mean, would you have it any other way? You also get 1 SMG in here. Now, if this was any other kit, that would be a big problem. But with the Japanese, you can only ever really take 1 SMG per squad anyway. So you don't really need more than one. So if this was Germans, I'd be saying, oh, 1 SMG is a terrible kit, but because it's not, it's Japanese, it's actually okay. It gets a little bit of a pass there. One of the other big bonuses you get is you do get a knee mortar in here. Now, what is great about this is you can use this to build squads of light mortars in your Japanese army, or if you just want to have a single light mortar team, you can go ahead and do that. So as you can see, you can build a lot of different unit types with this sprue. So on top of getting all the parts you're ever going to need to build all the different kind of line infantry for your Japanese army, basic riflemen, SMGs, LMGs, all that kind of good stuff, you also get all the bits to build pretty much any other kind of Japanese infantry model you're going to need. So, for example, you get the katana in here, and you get the pistol. That means you can use this kit to build an officer or multiple officers. You also get the bits in here with things like bugles and flags, which allows you to build other types of advisor, like air observers and stuff like that. The flag is actually, it does have rules within a Japanese infantry squad as well, so that's great. On top of that, you don't need to use this pole to build a flag. You can also use it to build a lunge mine guy, which is a suicide anti-tank unit. And last but certainly not least, you also get the bits for a light mortar. Now, you can build a separate light mortar team, or one of the unique Japanese infantry squads that you can get is they're called a grenadier squad, and you can take 3 light mortars in a unit. So you can use this sprue to build pretty much any kind of Japanese infantry that you need, and that is a big plus, because remember, you're getting 48 of these infantry, so you can build several squads with some rifles, some SMGs, some LMGs, and you're still going to have plenty of blokes left over to build some of those more specialist models. Maybe you want to use this bugle guy to represent an air observer or something like that. Maybe you want to have one of these lunge mine guys for a suicide anti-tank unit. Maybe you use this lying down guy and this sort of aimed Arasaka rifle to represent a sniper. You can use all sorts of different bits here to basically create any kind of Japanese infantry model you need for your bolt action army. Now, the next unit I want to talk about is that Type 97 Chiha medium tank that comes with the starter army. It is a brilliant unit to have for your Japanese force. The Japanese class it as a medium tank, but by bolt action standards, it's actually a light tank. Now, in World War II, the Japanese armor was it wasn't great, but in bolt action, it's weirdly good, because they don't really have any heavy vehicles, so all of their vehicles are quite light, but that makes them very cheap, which means that they're very good at punching above their weight. So for example, if you were to take this light tank for your Japanese, it's only going to cost you 135 points. A similar tank in a German army or British army might set you back 200 plus. At the very least, you're going to be looking like 175. So it's a really strong point that you get one of these tanks in your army, because it's actually a fantastic starter unit for your Japanese army, and it really gets you a feel for how to use your armor when on the battlefield. Now, what's also good about the Type 97 Chiha is it comes with two variants. You can build it with this earlier war variant, which comes with a light howitzer, very cheap, very affordable, but you may find that your army lacks a bit of anti-tank. I mean, at the end of the day, often tanks dual tanks in bolt action. However, if you want a tank that's a little bit heavier, can actually deal with enemy tanks, then what you want to be taking a look at is the Type 97 Chiha Kai Shinto. This is a later war variant of the Japanese Type 97 tank, and it comes with a medium anti-tank gun. The great thing about this is, for all intents and purposes, it's essentially the equivalent of a mid-war Panzer III. And I love the Panzer III. The Panzer III is a really, really good tank for your German forces. So the fact that the Japanese essentially get access to a pseudo Panzer III in terms of bolt action rules is a really, really strong point. I actually built my first Type 97 as a Kai Shinto with that bigger anti-tank gun. If I was a new Japanese player just starting out and I wanted to build a tank that I knew would be able to supplement my forces and cover that sort of general weakness in anti-tank that the Japanese tend to have, I would definitely build this tank as the Kai Shinto variant with that long anti-tank gun. When you think about it, if you don't build it with the longer medium anti-tank gun, then you're going to find that the only anti-tank in your army is going to be some suicide anti-tank guys, and they really aren't a reliable form of anti-tank. They're more of a psychological weapon that your opponent's going to want to try and deal with. So that would be my recommendation of how I would build this tank if I was getting this starter army. Now, after that, we have some of the metal models in the kit. Now, what's interesting, and this is the first negative that I would say about the starter army, is that it doesn't come with the full Japanese army support group. If you go and look at some of the other starter armies, they always include a medium machine gun, a medium mortar, an officer, and some advisors. They always include that. But for some reason, and that's the full support group that you tend to find for each faction. For some reason, in the Japanese starter army, you only get these three middle models. You get the mortar, you get this officer, and you get this medium machine gun. These four other single infantry models around the side, you will not get in your starter army. I don't want to go on about it too much, but that really is a big negative for me, because it means if you do want to go out and buy those, buy this Japanese army support group to supplement your force to get access to these officers, it's going to feel like a waste of time. You're going to end up doubling up on things like mortars and machine guns and stuff like that. So I really wish that Warlord hadn't been what I feel like is quite stingy here. I wish they'd just gone, look, here's the full support group, we'll chuck it in. What's really weird about this is when you compare it to the German Winter Starter Army, which basically comes with a very similar loadout to this Imperial Japanese Starter Army, you get the full support group. In the Winter German one, you get a medium machine gun team, a medium mortar team, all the officers and advisors, and you also get a tank, and you also get 48 infantry. So you do also get a tank on top of that. And yes, it's a little bit more, I should say a truck on top of that. And yes, it's a little bit more expensive, but, sans the truck, that starter army is basically identical to this one, so I don't understand why Warlord hasn't included the full support group. Now, that's my little gripe over with. I just thought I'd let people know about it. Going to the actual models themselves, these are the only metal models in the starter army you're going to have to encounter with. Now, this officer is very easy to build. He's a single piece model. You're going to literally take him, stick him on his base, and he is done. He is fully built. The other ones are a little bit trickier. Now, the crew are all going to be single piece metal models. The weapons themselves are going to come in a couple of different pieces. The machine gun is going to come with the tripod and the gun separately, and the mortar is going to come with the bipod, tube, and base plate separately, and you're going to have to glue those all together. Now, I had a recent bolt action player reach out to me and said he really struggled with building his bolt action metal models. So what I would strongly recommend when you're building these things is to use a good super glue. I have tried many different kinds of super glue when building my metal bolt action models, and I've always found some cheap store brand stuff is not gonna work. I personally use Loctite super glue. This isn't a sponsored video. I'm just saying it's my experience. I use Loctite precision super glue, and since I started using that stuff, I have never had an issue. My stuff goes together really easily first time. So I highly recommend when you're building these metal models that use a good super glue. Now, when you're painting them, you'll paint them exactly the same as you paint your plastic ones. You don't need to wash them or anything like that. They're not resin models. But what I would say is metal models do chip. So once you have finished painting the metal ones, I would give them a spray in some kind of matte varnish. I have in the past used the Games Workshop like Minotaur and Purity Seal, whatever it's called. I've used that in the past. It's been absolutely fine. Just make sure you give it a good shake and make sure that it's nice and warmed up. Otherwise, you may get a little bit of frosting. But do that and you will avoid your metal models from chipping. And trust me, it saves you constantly having to touch the models up. So overall, what do I think about the Imperial Japanese Starter Army? Well, I actually think it's a pretty good set. It does come in at a similar price point to many other starter armies, £106 from Warlord Games. You can find it for about £90 from many third-party retailers. And it comes with everything you need to get started and build a 1,000-point pickup Imperial Japanese Starter Army, which is great. I like the fact that it really gives you more infantry. That's definitely what you're going to be focusing on as a Japanese player. So overall, I think it is a good starter kit. If I was to expand off this set, I would start looking at things like maybe another box of infantry. That way you can have all the rifles you're ever going to need if you want to build an Imperial Japanese sort of Banzai tied army. Also, it'll give you enough models so that you can have all the SMGs, LMGs, knee mortars, officers and advisors, air observers, all that kind of stuff. So I'd probably pick up an extra box of infantry, and I'd also pick up something like one of the even smaller, lighter tanks that you can get with the Japanese, something like the Ha-Go, the Type 95. Those would be my two areas to expand into. One other thing that I think is a really, really good Japanese unit that I'd pick up is the really light howitzer. It's called like the mountain gun or the infantry gun. That's a really, really strong little light howitzer, and it complements perfectly the amount of sort of support teams you need for this Japanese army. So those would be my three areas of expansion if I was to build off this starter army. Now, in the last segment of this video, I want to compare the Imperial Japanese starter army to another starter set, and I thought a great one to compare it to would be the US Marine starter force, because it's a good chance that your Japanese are going to be facing off against the US Marines. Now, this starter army is the same price as the Japanese one, but it does come with a very different kind of army. Now, it does come with 46 infantry, but not all of those are plastic. In fact, it only comes with 42 plastic infantry, and the other infantry are going to be metal models and are also going to make up some of the crew for the weapon teams that we'll be taking a look at in a moment. So if we scroll down here, you can see the contents of that box. So you get 7 US Marine Corps sprues. Each one of those comes with 6 plastic infantry. You then get 2 US weapon sprues, which means you're going to get all the different weapon options you're ever going to need. Bazooka teams, all that kind of good stuff. Now, it then comes with 1 plastic half-track, but it does not come with a tank. So that's interesting. They've really lent into the more infantry side of the US Marines, and they're not giving them any serious armor. So if you were to take this starter army and put it up against the Japanese one, weirdly, the Japanese are going to have the armor superiority, which is kind of an interesting idea. Now, the other models you get is you get a metal medic, which is okay, but medics aren't that great in bolt action. You get a flamethrower team, which is really, really good. You get that medium mortar. You get a light anti-tank gun, which is great. And you also get 2 medium machine gun teams. So whilst you do lack the armor and the plastic infantry of the Japanese set, you do actually get a lot more support teams. You get a flamethrower team. You get an extra machine gun team. And you also get an light anti-tank team as well. So if I was comparing these two starter armies, I would say that they're kind of equal in terms of bang for buck, in terms of what you're getting for your money. But I would say that the Japanese one is actually a little bit better well-rounded. It comes with plenty of infantry, a few support teams. You can build other support teams using your infantry kit. And then it also comes with a pinch of armor for you to play with rather than just a half track. Now, that's not to say that the US Marine Corps starter army is a bad one. I just think that the Imperial Japanese one is a little bit more well-rounded, whereas the US Marine one is kind of encouraging you to go down a infantry heavy force, even more so than the Japanese one. If we compare the starter army in a general sense to many of the other starter armies that we've seen during the series, it levels out well. It compares well. It comes with a decent amount of infantry. It comes with a support team. It comes with a tank. The one thing it's missing is maybe a few more of those metal advisors, and it doesn't come with some form of transportation or armored car. But apart from that, it has pretty much all of the things you would expect in a starter army and is very much equal and in line with many of the other ones that are at a similar price point. Now, if you're thinking about picking up one of these Imperial Japanese starter army sets or any of the other starter sets that we've seen for bolt action, then please consider using my Element Game affiliate link down in the description below. By using that link, you're able to save between 15 and 25% off all of your hobbying needs, be that for bolt action, Warhammer, Star Wars Legion, or many other game systems. And by using it, you help support the channel. You see, how it works is Element Games will pay me a little bit of a finder's fee for directing a customer their way. Now, don't worry, it costs you no more for doing it. Element Game takes a little bit of their profit and they hand it over to me. And it's a win-win-win for everyone. You guys get to save loads of money, I get a bit of a finder's fee, and Element Games get a customer that they wouldn't normally get. On top of that, if you use my referral code at checkout, Tim3921, then you will earn double store credit for your future purchase with Element Games, which means in the long run, you're going to save even more money. So it's a great way to support the channel and save yourself some money at the same time. But that's all we've got time for today. Let me know what you think down in the comment section below. Would you recommend this starter army? Is there anything that you like or dislike about it? What is your overall feeling towards this starter set? If you've enjoyed the video, then please like it and subscribe to the channel to make sure that you never miss an episode. That's all for today. Thank you for watching, and of course, as always, I'll see you guys next time.